They laughed as she walked in her tracksuit. 14 seconds later, she put their laughter out. This isn't a story about revenge. It's about remembering. Remembering who you are when everyone else in the room has already decided you're nothing. Monica didn't arrive with noise, no loud announcement, no hype, just a woman in a plain black tracksuit and quiet shoes, stepping onto a mat where sweat and ego lived side by side. But before that night was over, the loudest person in the gym would be silent, and the most overlooked one would become unforgettable. This is a story for anyone who's ever been judged before they spoke, underestimated before they stood, or misread simply because they didn't feel the need to explain themselves. Leave a comment below to let us know where you are watching from, and if you like fascinating stories like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button because tomorrow we have another incredible story and there are many surprises waiting for you in the next part. The gym didn't welcome her. It tolerated her. Cross-Point Grappling Academy in Topeka, Kansas smelled like old sweat and new ambition. Fans roared overhead. The mats were hot from hours of movement, like the ground itself remembered every failed choke and every broken ego. Monica walked in like she was stepping into church. Her tracksuit had no logo, her green t-shirt had no slogan, and her expression had no need for approval. She didn't look like trouble. That was the trick. She looked like someone's mom who got lost on her way to Pilates. Cam at the front desk, a kid with acne scars and the attention span of a bored Cocker Spaniel, slid her a clipboard like it was a traffic ticket. "First time?" he asked, not looking up. "Not exactly," she said. He didn't ask anything else. Didn't care. But if he'd just asked one more question, the next hour might have gone very differently. Coach Renner barked orders between guard retention drills. He had a voice like broken gravel and a whistle that hadn't been used since the Obama administration. He saw Monica. Didn't acknowledge her. Probably figured she'd last a week. Maybe two if she liked punishment. The gym was humming, but Monica was still. She moved like someone watching the world through a window. Calm, hands folded. She didn't check her phone. Didn't fidget. She just sat. That's what got to Becca, a wiry 20-something with a snarky streak and a loyalty to Travis that bordered on delusion. "Whose mom is that?" she whispered to him, smirking. Monica heard it. Didn't flinch. Just unzipped her bag, like she'd done it 1,000 times. But under her stillness, something started to stir. Travis, the resident peacock, couldn't help himself. "Hey! Green shirt's about to get folded like a lawn chair," he said, just loud enough for the chuckles to ripple. The kind of guy who needed an audience to feel tall. Monica stood slowly, slipped off her shoes, and padded barefoot to the edge of the mat. She bowed, soft and quick, not for show. No one noticed, except one white belt named Eli, who'd only been training for 3 months, but had enough sense to see something was off in that way a quiet lake gets just before a storm rolls in. Monica warmed up with the group. Hip escapes, bridges, shrimping. Nothing fancy, but there was something unsettling about how smooth it was, like the movements weren't being learned, just remembered. Coach didn't say a word, but he did glance once, and in that glance something paused. It didn't last long, but it was there. Monica moved like someone who wasn't trying to get better, just trying to return to something she once knew in her bones. She didn't smile, didn't scan the room for approval. Her shrimping had a rhythm, like she was humming something only she could hear. Travis didn't notice, too busy talking about his new knee brace and how he almost lost his brown belt after cranking a heel hook too hard at some regional tournament in Wichita. Monica crouched against the wall, retied the drawstring on her pants like it was part of a ritual. She didn't look eager. She looked ready. And that, more than anything else, should have made someone pay attention. 12 years ago, Monica stood barefoot on cracked concrete under a tin roof in Fortaleza, Brazil. No AC, no mirrors, no music. Just Matt Burns, foreign words, and the kind of silence that taught you who you really were. She'd left a divorce and 2 kids back in Tulsa with her aunt, chasing air because she hadn't known how to breathe. That gym didn't care about stories. Only sweat. Her gi was plain, her belt always frayed. She wasn't trying to be a warrior, she was trying not to disappear. She remembered those mornings, the sun rising while her fingers bled from drilling collar chokes, and she remembered the day Mestre Valdo watched her roll, then muttered, "Vete mu spiritu." Stay. That's all he said. So she stayed. Not to win medals, not to post clips. She stayed because that's where she remembered she mattered, and when life called her back to the States, she folded that belt and shelved it like a photo album nobody needed to see. Back in the present, Travis looked right at her, smirked, and said, "Hope she stretched first. Hate to call the ambulance this early." Becca laughed. Coach didn't. Eli didn't. Monica just breathed. She had heard worse, much worse. She moved with the same grace you see in a seasoned jazz pianist playing a song nobody else recognizes, but every note hits like home. She didn't care if they laughed. Because the thing about people like Monica, they only care about one thing: the moment you stop laughing. And it was coming. No one in that room knew what was about to happen, but Monica did. And she was ready. Leave a comment below to let us know where you are watching from, and if you like fascinating stories like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow we have another incredible story, and there are many surprises waiting for you in the next parts. You don't learn jiu-jitsu in Forza. You inherit it through bruises, humidity, and mornings that break you before the sun even gets a chance. Monica remembered that air. How it stuck to your lungs like wet gauze and didn't let go until your gi was soaked, your shoulders screaming, and your ego boiled down to the size of a grapeseed. The open-air gym wasn't much more than a cracked slab of concrete under a warped tin roof. The mats were worn smooth in places and split in others, patched with duct tape and the pride of every student who had collapsed on them. Rusted dumbbells lined one wall like a graveyard of broken promises. There was no sound system. Just the slap of skin on canvas and the rhythmic grunt of effort. And there was Valdo Mestre. Valdo, barefoot, grim and watchful. His stare could strip you to the bone. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. On her third day, after a roll that left her shaking from the inside out, he tapped her shoulder, nodded once, and said, "Vete, mu spiritu." Stay, spirit. That was the first time in years she felt like something worth staying for. Monica trained like she had nothing to lose, because for a while that was true. Her fingers blistered, peeled, and bled, and still she gripped collars tighter. She started to dream in sweeps and counters, her breath syncing with the tempo of drills, her body learning to speak a language older than doubt. The women there weren't soft. They didn't smile when they sparred. They fought like it was the only thing keeping their worlds from collapsing. Monica didn't rise to meet them. She sank, willingly, until she belonged to that world, too. When she earned her purple belt, there was no crowd, no photo, no speech, just Mestre Valdo walking past her as she sat wringing sweat from her sleeves. He said, "Earned," and kept walking. That was all. She didn't need more. The belt was stiff in her hands, almost reluctant, like it didn't yet believe she deserved, but she tied it anyway. That knot stayed tight for years. Then one night, the call came. Her aunt, the one watching her boys back in Tulsa, had suffered a stroke, the kind that twists time and leaves people forgetting their own names. Monica booked a flight the same day. She didn't tell the gym she was leaving, didn't want goodbyes. In her apartment above the bakery, she folded her belt with slow, reverent fingers and tucked it deep into the bottom of her pack. She left the door unlocked, left the key on the table, left pieces of herself behind like crumbs she hoped someone else would find. She didn't cry until the plane was over the ocean, and even then it wasn't loud. It was the kind of cry that happens without movement, silent, sealed behind the eyes. She didn't know she was ever going back. All she knew was that the fire she'd built under that tin roof had gone out, and she wasn't sure she'd ever feel that kind of heat again. Back in the States, life became mechanical. Monica got a job in medical billing, 8-hour days typing in silence, eyes burning under the buzz of fluorescent lights. She'd come home, microwave something beige and forgettable, fold laundry with numb fingers, and watch her boys fall asleep with earbuds in. She didn't train, didn't even stretch. Her gi stayed packed in a plastic bin in the closet, tucked behind tax papers and a broken space heater. Her life moved forward, but not up, more like drifting. She moved through her days like background music, someone might have said if they'd bothered to notice. But most people didn't, and Monica didn't push to be seen. Then one night, something shifted. She was folding towels, absently flipping through old files on a thumb drive, when a grainy video blinked to life, a match from Forza. Her younger self was there, moving like a metronome, quick passes, clean grips. She didn't dominate, she danced. Monica stared, then watched again, and again. The footage had no sound, but it didn't need any. She remembered every breath, every beat. Jordan, now 17, walked in mid-replay. "That you?" he asked, eyebrows raised. Monica didn't speak, just nodded once. "Dang, you were kind of a beast." She smiled, small and tired, and shut the laptop. But that night she couldn't sleep. Something in her chest had stirred. Not a roar, just a thump. Quiet, patient, a memory waking up. She didn't tell anyone, not her boys, not her friends. She didn't make a resolution or an Instagram post. She just Googled gyms in Topeka and found Crosspoint. She called, asked about trial classes, and picked Tuesday. Simple, efficient. When they asked about her experience, she said some. They didn't press. That was fine. She didn't need them to know. The belts under her bed weren't for show. They were chapters. She wasn't walking into that gym to show people who she was. She was going because a part of her had gone quiet, and she needed to know if it could still speak. She didn't come to be seen, she came to remember, and for the first time in a decade, she packed her old gear bag. Not for Brazil, not for war, just for herself. But if someone had looked closely that night, really looked, they might have seen it. The flicker in her step, the coil behind her calm. They'd have seen a woman not returning to something, but reclaiming it, and once that door opened, it would not be closed again. Leave a comment below to let us know where you are watching from, and if you like fascinating stories like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow we have another incredible story, and there are many surprises waiting for you in the next parts. "Should have brought crayons!" Travis's voice cut through the room like a box fan in a sermon, too loud for the moment, too proud of itself. He grinned wide, looking around like someone who expects applause, not realizing the punchline had already expired. A few chuckles scattered across the mat, mostly from the kind of people who laugh because it's easier than silence. Monica didn't even blink. She was tying the drawstring on her pants with quiet precision, like her hands had done it 1,000 times in the dark. If she heard him, she didn't show it. If she cared, she didn't let it breathe. That was the thing about Monica. She never rushed to correct people's opinions. She just let them walk straight into the truth, and in that gym right then, the truth was stretching its shoulders. Coach Renner started assigning partners for drills, and Monica found herself paired with a teenage boy whose gi looked too new and whose fingers were wrapped in tape like he was expecting the mats to bite. "I'm Eli," he mumbled, not quite meeting her eyes. He shifted his weight from foot to foot, unsure if he should lead or follow, apologize or explain. "You want to go first?" Monica nodded gently, stepping forward with a calm that made space around her. They began drilling scissor sweeps, slow and clumsy at first. Eli bumped her leg, then recoiled. "Sorry," he blurted. Monica shook her head. "You're fine. You're actually close. Just anchor your elbow tighter and twist your hips more. Like this." Her voice was steady, instructional, like someone teaching someone else how to breathe underwater. Eli tried again, and this time his weight shifted just right. He looked up, blinking like he'd surprised himself. "Wait, you've done this before?" Monica smiled, but didn't elaborate. "A little," she said. Meanwhile, Travis was making sure nobody forgot he was in the room. He rolled with Devon, a tough blue belt who moved with a limp and zero tolerance for nonsense. Travis tapped exaggeratedly after every exchange, laughing too loud, calling out names of moves he wasn't actually using. "Almost caught me with that ninja guard," he said at one point. Even though Devon hadn't moved past half guard, the mat around them thudded with the sound of people working, but Travis' voice kept cutting through. Trying too hard, like someone yelling into a void, hoping it'll echo. He didn't notice Eli was smiling now. He didn't see Monica demonstrating grips with calm authority. He didn't hear the quiet shifting of the room. When the next partner rotation happened, Monica landed with Calvin, a man in his 50s who smelled like peppermint and wore a white belt so stiff it looked like it was still deciding whether it belonged here. "Any injuries I should know about?" she asked, voice respectful. "Just my pride," he chuckled, "but I think that's already on its last leg." She gave him a real smile. They began to drill, and within minutes it was obvious, not loud, not flashy, just undeniable. Her base was too stable, her movements too fluid, her transitions too clean. Calvin wasn't sure what to say, but he adjusted to her rhythm like a second language he hadn't realized he still remembered. Across the mat, someone paused mid-shrimp to watch her roll out of a sweep and reset with surgical precision. It was in her breathing, the tempo of her movement, calm, controlled, nothing wasted. She didn't move like she was trying to beat someone. She moved like she had nothing left to prove. And that, ironically, is when people really start to notice. Coach Rayner walked past during a partner's switch, eyes scanning the floor as usual. But when he passed Monica and Calvin, he slowed. Not much, just enough. He watched a single exchange. Monica caught Calvin's weight, shifted, and redirected him into a textbook sweep that landed feather soft. Rayner raised an eyebrow. "You said you were new to this gym?" he asked, casual but pointed. Monica tied her belt again, slow and neat. "I am," she said simply. Coach tilted his head. "Where'd you train before?" Monica didn't pause. "Different places," she said. Her tone didn't close the door, but it didn't invite company either. Rayner stood there a second longer, eyes narrowing slightly, then gave a small nod before moving on. He didn't press. But curiosity doesn't always knock twice. It lingers watching from the corner. The atmosphere in the gym didn't shift all at once. That's not how change works. It started in glances. Becca, who'd rolled her eyes earlier, now watched Monica with something closer to calculation than mockery. Eli, still working drills nearby, kept looking over like he wasn't sure if he should ask more questions or just observe. Even Calvin, who had shown up to class expecting a light workout and a few bruises, stood straighter. And Travis? Travis hadn't noticed a thing. Still holding court with whoever would listen, still mistaking volume for presence. But the room had started to tilt. It was in the way two blue belts paused their roll to watch Monica post and sweep with a grace that didn't match her green t-shirt. It was in the way silence started replacing sarcasm. And silence, once it settles, speaks louder than any belt color or highlight reel. People weren't sure what they were seeing yet, but they knew enough to stop assuming. Because when someone walks into a room looking like nothing and moves like everything, that's when respect begins, even if no one's ready to say it out loud. Not yet, but soon. Travis clapped his hands like a game show host calling down a contestant. "Yo, Monica, wanna roll?" His voice carried, full of showmanship, hitting the walls and bouncing off the mirrors like it belonged there. People turned, heads tilted. Even Coach Rayner paused mid-instruction to glance over. Monica looked up from tying her drawstring again. Her movements were unhurried, deliberate. She didn't smile. She didn't answer with bravado. She just stood. That was it. And somehow it was enough to make the laughter in the room shrink by half. The way she moved, measured, and still, had the eerie weight of something people didn't know how to read yet. Travis grinned, clearly expecting a show, not realizing he was seconds from becoming the opening act in someone else's story. They met in the center of the mat like two dancers at opposite ends of a forgotten song. Monica crouched low, fingers brushing the floor. Her breath was calm, not just calm, settled like steeped tea left undisturbed. Travis bounced on his toes, already smirking. "Let's see if yoga helps her here," he said to nobody in particular, but loud enough for everyone. A few soft laughs fluttered around the room, the kind that come from people too uncomfortable not to laugh. Becca didn't join them. She leaned against the wall, arms crossed, eyes sharp. Eli and Calvin stood near the edge, silent, watching. And Coach? He stood with arms folded, mouth tight, one brow just slightly raised. No one said it out loud, but the whole gym knew something was about to happen. It hung in the air like the moment before a thunderclap, and in that stillness Monica finally moved. Slap. Bump. Pause. That's all it was at first, the usual pre-roll ritual. Travis stepped in too quick, too confident, and Monica, without changing her expression, pulled guard with a smoothness that surprised even gravity. His footing faltered mid-step. She didn't wait. Her right leg snapped up over his shoulder before his weight had settled, and by the time he realized what was happening, her left leg had already locked behind her right ankle. The room didn't gasp. It held its breath. Travis collapsed, not because he tripped, but because her angle had removed his base like she'd unplugged his balance. He landed awkward, blinking, confused. He tried to posture up, but his shoulders weren't listening. His spine had been folded into a corner. It looked like a trap door snapping shut. Monica made one small adjustment, just a shift of her hips, barely noticeable if you weren't watching her feet, and the triangle sealed like it had been waiting for this moment. Travis thrashed once, a half-hearted attempt to spin out, but she held firm. No strain. No panic. Just breath and grip and a stillness that came from years of knowing how to close windows the moment someone left them cracked. He tapped. Not wildly, not even urgently, just 3 small, stunned pats on the mat, like a man quietly admitting he'd misunderstood the terms of the agreement. 14 seconds. That's all it took. When Monica released him, she didn't leap up or raise her fists. She sat back on the mat, legs crossed, and exhaled softly. Her eyes didn't scan the room. She didn't wait for a reaction. She wiped her forehead with a small towel and took a sip from an old steel water bottle. Travis lay still for a moment, blinking at the ceiling like he'd expected applause and got gravity instead. Someone on the far side of the mat muttered, "What just happened?" Rico, still sitting with his back to the wall, leaned toward Calvin and whispered, "That was the cleanest triangle I've ever seen in real life." His voice was reverent, like he wasn't sure if he should be impressed or embarrassed that he'd ever laughed in the first place. Monica said nothing. She didn't even glance at Travis. She had already moved on. Coach Renner stepped forward, hands on hips, eyes fixed on Monica. The room was dead quiet. You could hear someone's water bottle click shut across the mat. For a moment he just stood there. Then he spoke, not loud, but clear. "That wasn't luck." It wasn't a question, it was a statement, one that landed with the same weight as a stripe on a belt. The gym exhaled all at once. The silence broke, but no one dared fill it with jokes. Even Becca looked down for a second, as if trying to recalculate everything she thought she knew. Travis sat up slowly, rubbing the side of his neck. Not out of embarrassment, though it clung to him like heat, but from the deep ache of a choke well applied. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. The mat had already done the talking. Monica stood and walked back to the wall, calm as ever. She didn't look at anyone. Didn't strut, just moved like someone who'd done this 100 times before. Because she had. And for the first time that night, the room wasn't looking at her as someone who didn't belong. They were watching her the way people watch storms pass over mountains. Silent, humbled, and wondering what else she could do. Travis, now quiet for the first time all evening, pulled his belt tighter around his waist, but it didn't carry the same authority it had before. And Coach? He didn't smile, didn't nod, didn't clap. He just kept watching her like he'd finally started seeing the whole picture. Not the tracksuit, not the silence, but the presence. And presence like that doesn't arrive with fireworks. It arrives with finality. 14 seconds of it. Rico stepped forward like someone answering a question no one had asked out loud. His voice was quieter than Travis's had been. Respectful, careful. "You want to go?" Monica stood with a nod. Nothing about her movement had changed since the triangle. Still no big expressions, no adrenaline-fueled bounce. Just the same quiet grace. Like her body spoke its own language, and she was fluent in pauses. They slapped hands and bumped fists. Rico was fast. Young legs, sharp reflexes, good instincts. But she slowed him down without stopping him. Redirected instead of resisted. He shot in hard on her hips, and she angled, catching his balance mid-drive, sweeping with just enough tilt to leave him blinking. Then she let him reset. Gave him space. Rico came in again, more focused this time, and again she broke him down, not with power but with posture, timing, placement. "She doesn't win with muscle," someone whispered from the wall. "She wins with math." Rico tapped from an armbar, breathing hard but smiling. "That was sick," he said. She nodded and patted his shoulder. No more, no less. Then Becca stepped forward. Not loudly, not with attitude, just enough presence to say she'd made a decision. "My turn?" she asked. Monica didn't hesitate. They rolled, and Becca brought everything. Tough base, smart grips, a timing that said she'd been rolling longer than most of the guys who never shut up. But Monica slowed the whole exchange like she was turning the dial on a song only she could hear. Becca tried to isolate her wrist. Monica circled and broke the grip. Becca went for a quick drag. Monica shifted and reversed, then climbed to mount like she was stepping onto a train. No thud, no crash, just arrival. When the choke came, it came from the back, soft and sudden, like falling asleep. Becca tapped, sat up, and looked Monica in the eye. "You've done this a long time," she said. Monica gave the smallest nod. Becca didn't smile. She just breathed deep and sat beside her on the mat, like that's where she belonged. Poscherer stepped forward again, hands still on hips, this time slower. "You said you were new to this gym," he repeated. Monica nodded once. He tilted his head. "Where'd you train before?" She didn't stall, didn't dodge, just said it plain. "Brazil. Forza." The room caught the name like a glass slipping from someone's hand. It didn't shatter, but the silence was sudden, sharp. Forza wasn't just another academy. It was one of those places people whispered about during belt promotions. Hot mats, hard coaches, brutal training. That name had weight, and now it was hanging over everyone like steam. Nobody laughed. Nobody filled the silence. Even Travis, who'd finally worked his way off the mat, turned toward her with something between disbelief and recognition. Coach stared for a moment, the way you look at a lock you thought was rusted shut, only to find out it opens with the key you never thought to try. "You a black belt?" he asked, softer this time. Monica's reply wasn't defiant, wasn't apologetic, just steady. "I was," she said. "I am. I just don't wear it." Travis looked at her like he was finally seeing her for the first time. Not the tracksuit, not the silence, but the truth stitched into every move she'd made. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. The room already knew. Coach didn't smile, but the edge of his expression shifted. "You could have said something," he said. Monica's reply was almost a whisper, but it carried like wind through an open door. "I didn't come here for that." She adjusted her sleeve, pulled it back down over her wrist. "I didn't come to be impressive. I came to train." Becca nodded slowly beside her. Rico looked over like someone hearing a sermon for the second time and realizing he hadn't caught it all the first. Monica didn't stand up. She didn't start teaching. She didn't explain Brazil or belts or why she'd left. She just stayed still, breathing, calm. "Sometimes," she added, not looking at anyone in particular, "the loudest flex is staying quiet." And somehow, in a room that once laughed behind her back, no one dared speak over that. Dinner was simple. Nothing special, nothing plated like a commercial, just spaghetti with jarred sauce and 2 pieces of garlic toast from the freezer, edges crisp, middle still a little soft. Jordan sat at the table, earbuds dangling loose around his neck, half scrolling his phone, half watching the steam rise from his plate. Monica moved around the kitchen like she always had, quiet, fluid, unfazed. But there was a different weight in her shoulders tonight, not heaviness, presence. He glanced up. "Jim, go okay?" he asked, voice casual, not expecting anything beyond fine. She nodded. "Yeah." He twirled some pasta around his fork. "You roll with anybody?" Monica stirred the sauce absent-mindedly before answering. "A few." That was all she said. But Jordan noticed she didn't sit down right away. She paused by the counter for an extra beat, as if she was letting something land inside her before the next moment could begin. And in that small, invisible pause, the kitchen filled with something bigger than steam. Later that night, after dishes were done and the kitchen lights dimmed, Monica sat alone in her room, with no TV, no music, no phone. Just silence. The good kind. The kind you earn after being misunderstood by people who didn't ask the right questions. Her eyes wandered to the duffel bag still on the floor. She hadn't unpacked it yet. She didn't need to. In her mind, she was somewhere else entirely. She thought of Brazil, the mornings before sunrise, the sting of the mat, the voice of Mester Valdo. "Voce no pese gritar quando sua presença já fala," he once told her. "You don't need to raise your voice when your presence already speaks." Then her mind skipped to Travis. Not the choke, not the tap, but the moment after, when he didn't look at her, and how that silence said everything his words never could. She wasn't angry, she wasn't vindicated, she was centered. The kind of centered that doesn't come from applause, but from showing up when no one thought you would. She got up and walked across the room to her closet. From behind an old winter coat, she pulled out a worn shoebox, the same one she'd packed the night she left Brazil. She opened it carefully, like lifting the lid on something fragile but still alive. Inside, folded and coiled like a memory, was her black belt, faded in some places, threadbare in others, but still whole. She didn't lift it out. She didn't tie it around her waist. She just placed her hand on it gently, like greeting an old friend who didn't need small talk. The belt didn't judge her for not wearing it, and she didn't owe it anything. She wasn't hiding anymore, she just didn't need a parade. Some people post pictures, some people write captions. Monica just breathed. A few minutes later, she reached for her phone. It was late, but not too late. She opened a blank message and typed without overthinking it. "Hey, Coach. I'd be down to help Mondays if you ever need an extra hand. No pressure." She hit send and set the phone down, not expecting an immediate reply, but it buzzed almost before it hit the nightstand. "Absolutely. Let's talk tonight." She stared at the message for a second, let the corner of her mouth lift just slightly, then turned off the screen. She didn't text back. She didn't need to. He knew she'd show up. That was enough. If you've ever been doubted, dismissed, or told you didn't belong, remember Monica. The world might not clap when you enter the room. It might hand you a clipboard instead of a welcome, but that doesn't mean you stop showing up. You don't need to prove yourself to people who haven't earned the right to know your story. Show up anyway. Move with calm. Let your presence do the talking. And when it's time to speak, let it be quiet, but undeniable, because sometimes the strongest sound in the room isn't noise. It's you showing up. Again. Leave a comment below to let us know where you are watching from, and if you like fascinating stories like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow we have another incredible story and there are many surprises waiting for you in the next parts.